Mino Line Media presents the Business First Podcast.
Hi, all, and welcome to a new episode of Business First with Sonia Aline. I am your host, and today we're going to be talking about book publishing, printing, writing, and editing. And, until I met this guest that I'm about to introduce you to, I had never really talked about editing, although I've been an editor for over 20, 30 years. I'd never really talked about it on a public platform. I've talked about writing and we've talked about publishing, but it's why she created the company she created and she does the podcast that she does. Please welcome to the studio, Nadia Geagea Pupa, who is the co-founder and CEO of Peak Publishing. And she is also the host of the Editor's Half Hour podcast. Welcome, Nadia.
Thank you so much for having me here. What a nice introduction.
I'm so glad you're here. And just to let the audience know that Nadia and I met through a mutual friend who thought that she'd be a perfect connection for me because I am publishing my third book. I had been published through through a publishing house before, and this was my first attempt at self-publishing, and I never thought it would be as difficult as it was. And so I was introduced to Nadia. She made a couple of recommendations for me. And it was a 15-minute scheduled conversation that turned into like an hour conversation about all the stuff that we've done in our past lives around editing. And so we'd like to share that with you all because Nadia has so much great information about the process and why this is an important skill and what self-publishers need to look at. And so Nadia, I want to talk to you a little bit about your start. You started roughly 20 years ago in publishing, or at least that's when you were introduced to the craft. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Oh gosh, I'm going to try to keep it short, so cut me off at any time, Sonia. You're right. I started about roughly 20 years ago. I thought I wanted to be a journalist. That's what I was, that was my path. I had my mindset that was what I wanted to do. And, I got into it. I went to community college, which was great. It was a great opportunity for me to not only save money, but also get the exposure to opportunities that I normally wouldn't have. So I was editor-in-chief of the college student newspaper. It was a lot of hard work. It was a lot of coordinating who's doing what. I learned a lot how to, be a leader. But at the end of the day, you're spending a lot of time on an article that has the shelf life, I guess, in air quotes, a day, 2 days, maybe a week at most, if it's a feature article. And that was so upsetting to me because I thought, all that work and now it's gone. And I really wanted to admire the time and energy that went into that. So I'm going to try to cut my story, make this long story short. I ended up, focusing on, I guess I should say I jumped into academic journals. And I realized that there was a lot in the nonprofit world. So there's a lot of educational materials that need editing. And so that's where I really found my interest. I was like, this is so cool. I'm doing books now. Academic journals and magazines are still my passion. I still take on those clients and have those projects right now. But the book world, textbooks, books by authors, self-published authors, all types of books. That's my true love, my one true love.
Yeah. I think our beginnings were similar. In fact, that we didn't know that editing was a possibility. Like I had always wanted to be a journalist as well. And it wasn't until I had my first job that I understood what an editor could do. And that person became a mentor to me. And then that's what started my career. And so I know a lot of your work too is to what I love about you pull editors together to have these regular conversations, but I know you're also interested in letting people know about the craft and how important it is, and that it is even still in this digital age, that it's still a viable career path.
It really is. And that's what's happening right now is there's so much confusion and borderline panic because of AI. And so editors are, they're still standing strong and they know that they have a place in this world for editing. But now what's happening is editors can do so much more. And you know that, Sonia, because you were like, hey, there's a place for me in these other areas, utilizing the skills that you have. Interviewing people, that's a skill, consolidating information and putting it into a clear and concise article, that's a skill. writing and editing, there's a little bit of overlap. Some people are like, nope, I'm not a writer, I'm just an editor. And then there's the other side. So there's a spectrum. But what's happening is, with, like I mentioned, AI, it is creating a little bit of that panic. But now editors are seeking other areas that they can use their skills. So one of those things, and I will be presenting on this topic soon, is providing manuscript evaluations. That's so interesting because I'm not editing. And I talked to you about this, Sonia. Editing can be super technical. Our 15-minute conversation went into, it felt like 2 hours. I could have kept talking to you for hours. The technical editing side of things is like the copy editing, or the commas, the hyphens, making things consistent, following a specific style. But now editors are realizing, hey, I can evaluate a manuscript and really assess it for its content. Is it good? Am I interested? Are you going to lose? Is it boring? What areas are weak? What areas are strong? And how do you get your audience engaged with the book? So who better than an editor to tell you that? So that's kind of what's happening now in the industry, and where editors are, there's such an amazing place for editors in this world. And it feels a little bit like the Wild West right now because of book coaches. And there's so many different avenues we could talk about in territories in the editing and publishing world. But there's a lot happening, but it's still a thing. Like we need editors. They can't go away.
Yeah. And that was really helpful when we had our conversation, because in the beginning, that's where I was struggling as well. It was just like figuring out, I think when people said, oh, I'm looking for an editor, they were really looking for someone to go line by line on a manuscript. But there are so many areas where you can take your skill set and develop that and create a business like you have. And so when someone is coming to Peak Publishing, what can they expect to get from your company?
Oh gosh, so much stuff, because people have come to me from both areas. And I look at my company as divided into two categories. So there's authors. Authors come to me and they may say, hey, I want to write a book, and haven't written a single word. That's great. That's not something where I'm going to say, hey, see you later, peace out, I'll find you somebody. I will take on those clients if they have a really, really great story and they are motivated. That's huge for me. If they're motivated and really want to get their story out there, I will work with them. So if they want to self-publish, that's great. If they want to try to get a book deal, I'm there for them, and I want to help them all the way through. So that's one side of the business, is working directly one-on-one with authors, whether it's in the coaching sessions, manuscript evaluations. I could go all the way through and design the book for them. I do book covers, everything. And it's not just me. It's not I'm not a solopreneur. Right. I look at my company as I'm an entrepreneur. And so the other side of my company is the corporate clients. And that's, oh gosh, everything. Corporate clients, I call them, but it's everywhere between academic institutions, nonprofit organizations, private corporations, government agencies. They all need editors. They all have educational materials. Everything needs to have unified voice, branding. And so that's what clients can expect when they come to Peak Publishing. It's not just the line by line editing. It's not just copy editing. That is part of it, but it's developmental editing. It's like rolling up my sleeves, and I become part of a team, and I look at myself as an extension of the team, where I can say, hey, let me facilitate a board meeting, or a editorial advisory board meeting, I should say, where I could speak to the content, talk about editorial themes. And so it's really diving in, and it's different than just being a part of that conversation of, well, should we hyphenate this word or not? Like that's just one small, like that's just one small piece of the puzzle. I'm that big thinker, and I know you are too, Sonia, where if someone comes to you with an idea, I feel like we both align so well, because we're like, okay, this is one way you could do that. This is how you could tell your story and really dive in. And it's so being a part of those discussions, it gets me going. That's really exciting.
Yeah. In the work that you do with self-publishers, what you said earlier is so true. I've met, and I know you have too, so many people who say, I know I have a book in me, right? And so they really do want to write a book. And I've read in one of the articles where you were quoted that sometimes they really underestimate the publishing process and like what it takes and so for those in the audience who are listening who feel like, oh, I have a book in me, or they've started, I've met people who've done outlines and they've had those outlines for like 10 years, right? And they just don't know what to do, how to take that next step, or they've been thinking about something for 5-6 years. And so what would you say to someone, who's in that place? I have a book in me, I have a book idea, but they don't even know what first step to take.
Oh gosh, I could be probably the most annoying person in the world to those people because I won't let it go. Once I hear about it, and it's not even the fact that I want them as a client. It's just because once I hear that about somebody, I bring it up all the time. Like, hey, you got to share your story, because it's a treasure trove of it's one of the way I get excited. I can't even talk because I'm getting so excited. I can't even spit it out. The reason why I get like this is because these authors who have these books in them, they don't have a clue what those stories can do for other people. So if somebody else hears their story, and let's say it's something that is devastating to them, or something deeply, it could go dark. There's dark things that happen to people, and they go through these healing journeys when they write their stories. It could be something like that gives somebody else hope, and then encourages them, inspires them to change their lives. And that happens. And it sounds cheesy, whatever, but it's true. People can read a book and that book can change their life. It could be by a self-published author, published by a major publishing company. Regardless, your individual stories are important. So speaking directly to these people who know, they have their outline, they've got their book, you don't even have to work with me. Just don't give up on that, because you have no clue how your message can affect somebody else and change their life.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I don't believe it's corny or cliche-ish at all. I think that the fact that you feel that this story has to come out is indication that it's supposed to touch somebody or help someone or encourage someone who might feel stuck and needs to hear your story. In terms of, and so for the person at the next level, right? The person who's written the book and it's here, it's ready to be presented. And that was my challenge. I didn't think that was going to be an issue for me because I thought I had it all, right? So I'm a writer and I'm editor. And so so that was an easy part for me. My partner is a designer. I want to talk to you about that mix as well later.
Oh gosh,
my partner is a designer. And so I was just like, we have it all. Like it's laid out, it's designed, it's written, it's edited, it's properly punctuated. But then there was this like, finding the right publisher. And then for us, we wanted a spiral book, and to know that, so there are all of these things. And so I don't know if there is a checklist, but are there some things or some questions that people should be asking when they are now shopping for a publisher? I know a lot of folks will do things maybe just, through Amazon. One of the reasons I didn't want to go directly through Amazon is because they take a pretty big percentage of what you make. And so, but there are tons of options out here. It's just trying to figure that out.
There's so much to talk about in this world. It's really, I always feel like, to answer this question, it just goes back to the goal. What's your goal? Are you writing a book to get yourself on more podcasts, to get yourself interviewed, to speak, to present at conferences and sign books and create like a following, or you may already have a following? Writing a book and publishing a book can just elevate that person and give them a little bit more credibility. So that's like a business book, or, a nonfiction book that's, sharing information. I would categorize that more into the educational or how to area. And so that's just one genre. There's fiction, fiction writers have a different approach to when they release books. So I guess, there's a lot to be said about what that book is, what that project is, who are your client, or not clients, but who are your consumers, the buyers, who do you want to have buy the book? Because you're obviously sharing information with a certain audience. So for the aspiring writers or authors who are trying to navigate this, it's tough because there's so many options and you could be led astray. And that's what infuriates me. an article just came out today that I was interviewed in an article. I don't think I've ever been, I'm starting to become more opinionated now and not hold back, but there are people who are and I don't even know why, they want to make money. They're inflating their prices unnecessarily. There's a certain, you have to pay up, it's going to cost a lot of money to self-publish, whether it is on Amazon or not. And it is annoying that Amazon takes that big cut, but you shouldn't be paying an enormous amount to self-publish. It does cost money. So I think that's really what it is setting the expectation on what it actually costs to self-publish and to do it the right way. There are people who just export their Word docs into PDF and then they post that on Amazon, and that is fine. I'm not saying that's wrong, but you've just missed out on a lost opportunity for customizing the font, adjusting the headers and footers the way they should be, making it look top-notch. You're not going to get a top-notch book if you export it from Microsoft Word. You're going to save yourself a ton of money, but right. That's the problem in the self-published world is if you cut corners and save money, people can tell, and you're going to lose your readers, and you're going to get negative reviews, whether it's on Amazon or, Barnes and Noble, Google. I mean, there's so many different other vendors aside from Amazon, but that's really what it kind of boils down to, regardless of the genre, is setting aside that budget and understanding that you need to have a budget for printing, editing, design, print. I think I already said printing. I'm going all over the place.
Yeah, no.
But it's marketing. That was the last one. Right. It's really, really understanding that it does cost a good amount of money. It shouldn't make you go bankrupt. I hope not. There's people paying ridiculous fees for things that I'm like, why would you pay that much for that? But that's truly what it boils down to is setting up a realistic budget.
Yeah. And I'm glad you made mention of knowing what your goal is, because I think sometimes when, the thought of writing a book is to become maybe a New York Times bestseller, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the goal. It can be used as part of your marketing. It can be used as an add-on if you're speaking. It can be part of a brand. Or part of your brand being a thought leader. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's very important for people to understand why, right? Like you may have a story to tell, but in terms of like, why does this book need to exist? And then how are you going to go forward? And to your point as well, I'm experiencing that as well, just understanding the importance of budget. And by the time you get to the publishing part of it, like, the numbers can be like very exaggerated and vary in a lot of different areas. So so to all our aspiring writers, make sure you do your homework. So doing a little background research like on your website and a couple of articles that you've been in, I thought it was interesting that we had another thing in common, that you're married to your partner. I'm not married to mine, but our partners are both in design. And so that's an interesting combination too, because sometimes we kind of see them as separate, and they are separate skills, but they blend really well together. And so tell us about what you learned about the importance of including design or having that aspect of design as your partner.
Oh gosh. Design when I met my husband, Phil, he obviously changed my life. I married the guy. I mean, I fell in love with him, but he inspired me so much. He's the one that said, wouldn't that be cool if you knew how to design books? And, they were just dating at the time. And I'm looking at him like, you don't know. I really thought I was above that. Like, design? Like, I'm an editor. Excuse me? I'm an editor. Editors don't design books. Like, what the hell are you talking about? So yeah, I definitely gave him attitude, and I was actually like offended by it. Like, that is not my thing. And then, they brought it up again. And when he brought it up again, I thought, I don't think he's trying to offend me. Why am I taking offense to this? Like, he's actually onto something. And he said, think about it. The content. What if you just designed it? And what if you didn't have to go to a designer and wait on them to put in those changes, and you could just do it yourself? And he goes, how cool would that be? You would probably get you'd be more likely to get a job. And we met during the recession. Like, there were no jobs, it was really tough getting a job. We were in Chicago at the time. And so I I just taught myself. I let him teach me. And now I know more about InDesign than he does, because over time you learn how to use things, and very complex things that I have had to design, like textbooks, there's infographics, charts, exhibits, so many other complicated things that go alongside of it. And think about it, like, imagine if you're working with, on a developmental level, with a subject matter expert who's not a good writer but has all of the information. And here I come, the editor, hey, what's up? And I'm working with this awesome subject matter expert, and all of a sudden I'm like, wait, I'm in charge of everything. Hey, what if we did this infographic, because this is really cool info, and I'm just creating more work for myself. But I know that, creating and obviously this all happened not when I created my company. This was as an employee. I was just a staffer, and I'm coming up with all these ideas because I was passionate about how to display that information. And I knew that I could create a really engaging graphic to go alongside of these bullet points or these top 3, whatever. And, we could create these cool things. So that is where that design part came in. And so, yeah, my partner, my husband, he's the one that opened my eyes to that and made me realize how important that is. So that's now where I firmly believe that, editing and design, or I should say content and design, are just equally important. Because once you've got a crappy looking book, really bad book cover, you may have the most brilliant, amazing things in that book, but it's lost completely because it looks like crap. And so if you don't have that design there and that quality, that level of quality, it's going to be lost. And it makes me so sad. And that's where I'm so passionate when I do work with clients and they want to go all the way to design. That's when I speak up and say, hey, I can make it look top notch. We can go there with your content because it deserves it, versus just focusing on the content. So that's that design. Oh, I love it. I could keep going and going. I need to stop, but design changes everything.
Yeah, because it's all part of how you communicate. It's the words are important, but what it looks like and what people feel when they see it, right? That's all part of making that emotional connection, so that someone will want to read your book or even look at it, right? To even pick it up and look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because I'm doing this literally right now. I'm designing a book for one of my clients. I should say the book cover. And I came up with these really kick-ass designs. And I was really excited. And then I sent them to him, and they're different concepts, completely different. Like one is an illustration or a vector image. Another one is a actual photograph. One looks very documentarian style. It's for a nonfiction book. And the one that looked the best, and I was like, damn, that's a good cover. I was really excited. and I sent it to him, and he liked it too. But after I sent it to him, I looked at it and I was like, damn it, that looks like a Tom Clancy novel. And it's not a Tom Clancy novel. It's not even fiction. And so that's when we're like, okay, take a step back. Like, you cannot get sucked in, because that's the allure of design. Is you're looking at things and you're like, oh, that looks great. I would pick that up. What do you, you talk, and then you talk to the author and they're like, great. But if you don't have that third party, that's why it's not just me running my company. Somebody else made a comment like, that's a kick-ass cover, but that looks like a Tom Clancy novel, like right alongside of these like military fiction stories. It is not a military fiction story. It's close, but not quite. And so that's the other side of working with the team that makes it so much better, because then somebody's going to say something that you didn't think of. And then you're like, crap, they're right. So we got to really rethink this. And
that brings up a whole nother area, because with creatives, whether you're writing or designing, right, when you create, you really feel proud and good about what you've developed, right? Because you feel like it came from a really authentic place, and you're really proud. And so how is it sometimes just receiving the feedback that, it's not so nice. Or no, I don't know if that's going to work.
It happens. It happens, and it sucks. But not being open to that is a sign of, not a good leader. Somebody who thinks that they're always right and they're amazing and this wonderful designer, and then their ego just gets bigger and bigger. You have to not have an ego, and I know that writers I know writers don't have big egos. At least the ones that I've met, they're truly humble and honest, and they sometimes hold back when they write their stories. Like, I don't think anybody's going to care. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Of course people are going to care. I'm like practically yelling at them, like, please put this story in the book, like in the manuscript. And like, I don't know if I want to write about that. And I'm like, come on. Somebody, I'm talking about the same client now, but he mentioned in his book, just in passing, like, oh, luckily I have 2 master's degrees and, and this and that, and glazed over this. I'm like, are you kidding me? 2 master's degrees? Like, let's pause in the book and write about that. That's, first of all, not easy to get. And second, you really should not almost downgrade or suppress how important something like that is. And writers are humble that way. And so that's more of what I see versus, the other side of like, how dare you offend, how dare you give me the truth about my manuscript. And, for me too, it's, I take that step back, and I understand now, because I've been doing it for so many years, that's part of the process. I might get so damn excited and it's like, oh, this cover is amazing. And it is. And then it's like, wait a minute, we're getting way down this, area of like excitement over something that is missing the mark on who is the audience. You constantly have to, go back, circle back. What is the goal? Who's the audience? Who's going to be picking up this book? Yeah.
So you really operate as a coach. That's a very, a very big part of how you manage clients and take them through the process.
Absolutely.
Is that a very natural position for you, or is it something that you think you've grown into as part of the business?
I think it's both, honestly, both, because early on, I mentioned the editor-in-chief position. That's scary. I'm just a kid. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And I'm sitting here leading a team of other kids my age, what to do. And they're looking at me, and then there's arguments like, this should be the front page. No, this should. And so you kind of grow over time on what, standing your ground on making decisions for the good of the publication, and, getting understanding and knowing what is going to hook the reader. Well, how are you going to engage with an audience? Those things happen over time. So that's where that coaching instinct would come in. And that's where that almost borderline leadership position of, okay, let me take this project and take charge. There's no room for wishy-washy. There's no room for, well, maybe this or that. No, this is how you're doing it. When I take that position and I guide the author or corporate client down a specific path, we're not wasting time. I know what they want. I'm going to try to get a slam dunk I try, that's not possible to get that slam dunk every time, but I try, I aim for that. And having that, motivation and having that high standard is what sets you apart. And everybody, I'm speaking to all editors, writers, anybody, have always pushing the limit to, get that high quality standard, whether it's design, editing, writing. That's where, I know I'm going way off track because you asked me about coaching versus,
but I understand where it takes you. I understand that line of how coaching intersects with just all of the principles of just good management as well, for your team and for your clients, team and clients. I've witnessed
really bad leaders, in the corporate setting. And I think that's another thing too. I know everybody, and I love hearing these stories too, like the bad side of business or, mismanagement, micromanagement, all of these negative things that you've witnessed. I don't ever want to lead the way I've witnessed other women lead. Women, and we're hard critics on ourselves, but I want to be better than that. I've seen some horrible things. There's horrible gossip that women backstab, really bad things in the office setting. It makes a toxic work environment really, really bad, a bad place to be. And I didn't ever want to create that or be a part of that. And so I'm like, when I start my own company, I'm going to do it my way, and so there's that empowerment side. So when I do take on those projects, like you said, it is like, I'm in control of this project. I'm not going to let that scope creep happen and let things go crazy. And like, oh, by the way, it's going to be a couple $1,000s extra, going back to the client to tell them, it's setting those expectations too. And I think that's where I'm like, okay, I'm the coach on this. I'm the project manager on this. We're going to get this done, and I'm going to be focused. And that's what makes me feel secure in the project too, versus just a tiny little piece of it,
And so in the midst of all of it, you've extended your expertise into the podcasting world. And so when did you start the Editor's Half Hour podcast?
The Editor's Half Hour was born this year in January. I had started it. It was an idea I had last year, and I thought, I started listening to podcasts for editors. And once you get into publishing, you start to see there's a ton out there, right? But the podcasts that I kept finding, which were great, were for writers. How to write your narrative, or how to build world building and character development. And they're all so interesting to me. And I listen to all of those things. But what about what I do? What about the editing process? I want to talk about hyphens and commas, as annoying as they are. Like, let's get nerdy, people. And so that's not a place for that. That's really for the editor's job to focus and get stressed out about whether or not something gets hyphenated. And so then I'm like, I want something more nerdy. And so I couldn't really find too much. There is stuff out there for editors, but not as much as there is. I would say it's like a small, tiny little pocket that exists versus this mass world of podcasts out there for writers. And so that's where I was like, I want to do this. I'm interested in this. So last year I started thinking about it. What am I going to call it? And it goes right back to what you're saying, Sonia, about my husband. He came up with the name. I wanted to call it, I wanted to call it the Editor's Hour. And I wanted it to be an hour. But he was like, well, I don't think people are going to listen to an hour. Like, I mean, I don't know. And plus, I don't have the attention span myself to listen to myself talk for an hour. Let alone,
it's great marketing. Yeah, because if you think half hour, you go, I can sit for that, right? Yeah. Like automatically you go, I can sit for a half hour. I can listen.
Exactly. I totally can. Yeah. And if I'm driving somewhere that's 20 minutes away, it's a half hour fits in. And so he goes, and then Phil goes, well, what if you did like the little carrot and you did like the editing and you can see the thing in my backdrop with the half, like that's the edit in there. So, I was like, that's genius. Why didn't I think of that? So that's the design side, You're
going to have to keep him. Yes.
I plan to.
He's come up with just a few great ideas. So.
Yeah, really good ideas. He came up with the logo, the Peak Publishing logo. He's like, what if we made the P look like a paragraph symbol and then like flipped it the other way? I'm like, genius. Oh, let's do that.
Because that was the first thing I noticed in the logo for the Editor's Half Hour podcast. The carrot and the half written in there. So that is great. That is great. So what do you expect that well, actually, let me go back a little, because I said this at the beginning of the show, and I think it's why you and I connected so quickly, is because what you said was right. Like there's a ton of information, even outside of podcasts, there's a ton of information for writers and novelists and the sort. But I had never really had, except for private conversations, I had never had platform conversations. I've been on hundreds of panels, never talked about editing. And it does seem something like it's almost like this clique profession that, those who know, and we talk about our frustrations, or we talk about, what we struggle with, but there really hadn't been, at least that I hadn't been familiar with, that there was a platform. And so, so I'm personally grateful for your podcast and plan to be listening more. What do you hope the podcast will do for the industry, for writers, for editors in general?
There's a lot that I honestly hope that they'll gain from it. And it really does boil down to just inspiring and empowering other editors to, take charge of what they do, know what their skills are, and really just lean into that hard and not, be a little like, oh, I don't know. So many women that I meet, when they see jobs or job postings, they'll see, well, it needs this many years of experience, somebody who has such and such background. And I'm the type of woman that's like, I don't care. I'm just going to apply because I know I can do it. Mm-hmm. And I know it just takes me one time, and I know I'm going to do it. I know I'll do a good job. But there are women, and I say women because I've met more women editors than male editors. I know there are male editors that exist, but women specifically tend to take on that mindset of, well, I don't meet those requirements, so I'm just not going to apply. And I'll wait for something better to come along. But I think that's the goal of the podcast, is speaking to those editors specifically that, no, you're going to apply because you know you can do it. You've got the skills. And then the other side of the podcast is also going even deeper down the rabbit hole of what editing really is by interviewing the experts, and I want to talk about editing in a way that isn't intro level editing. I don't want to talk about, okay, this is proofreading, this is copy editing, and this is the difference. I don't even want to go there. I don't even want to waste the time. I'm just going to dive right in. We're going to just go in and talk about it as if we've been doing it for years. And I don't want to exclude newbie editors. I think newbie editors will pick it up pretty fast or pause the podcast and look it up. So that way we could just get into it for seasoned professionals to get more out of it, because there's not enough for those types of editors. So it's a two-sided thing. So it's like empowering the ones that are not quite sure if they can do certain things in the publishing world. And then also, it's just empowering and just getting that information out there to the editors who've been doing it for years. And you still learn something new every day in this world, editing world, I should say.
What's next for Peak Publishing?
Well, next for Peak Publishing is I got a lot of plans. I got a lot. I want to start. Okay, let me focus. So I am starting to get writers who have such awesome stories that it's like, I can't even imagine if they self-published, it would be great for them, but I want to really push them to get real book deals with real publishing companies, whether they're indie or major book deals. So I am working in that world right now. I'm starting to learn more about like the book proposal process and what that involves. So aiming a little higher than just the self-publishing. You're not limiting yourself, but the outreach with a big book deal is bigger. So that's a big thing that I'm working on.
So you'd be operating as a literary agent or getting people prepared for that process?
Yes, getting people prepared for that process. I want to meet more literary agents. That's the part of it too. So I want to meet more literary agents, work on book proposals, query letters, helping them through that process and introducing them to an agent. If I can meet agents, I don't know. That's another thing on the podcast. I want to get somebody to talk about the literary agency world and how editors and agents can maybe work together a little bit better. It's not a clear,
right. I have
relationship.
Some referrals for you too. So offline, I can give you some names. Okay.
Send them to me. Yeah. Another thing I'm working on right now that I'm super excited about is a product that I want. I've never sold a product. I sell professional services, right? Mm-hmm. But I want to sell something that is going to, again, empower editors. And I've been seeing these affirmation cards. And now that I'm saying this, it's like I'm getting nervous because I haven't gotten
now you got to do it.
Now I got to do it. And I'm glad I'm doing this to myself. But affirmation cards are such a thing right now. Yeah. And I was like, oh, what if there were affirmation cards for editors? And so I looked it up and I couldn't find anything. And just something where, you pick up a card and you can display it or put it next to your computer and it says something empowering or something really positive about what you can do and be as an editor. Even if it says something as simple as, I am a good editor. Maybe you just need to see that and get through the day. Absolutely. And our conversation when we first met, I mentioned how isolating the world of editing is. Mm-hmm. You work in isolation all the time, and it could get to you.
Because even when you are in a company, right, editors are still kind of isolated, right? Like, here's your project, and just you knock it out, you get it done, and then you deliver it. And so there's not a lot of collaboration, even when you are working for a major organization. I think that's why I hadn't thought about it until we started having these conversations. But that's why this work is so important. Yeah,
it is. And I think editors just need to meet other editors. I think that's another big thing too, is another reason why I wanted to do the podcast is editors who meet other editors. Not only do you learn something, but they could be a potential opportunity for referrals to come your way, or you send referrals. Absolutely. It's a reciprocated thing. Yeah. And working in isolation, it's great and all because you need to, and you need to focus as an editor, but too much of that can really wear you down, and the loneliness can creep in, and then you feel like you start to self-doubt, like, does that comma go there? Wait, I don't know. Wait, and you question yourself, like, I don't think I know where that comma goes. And it's so stupid, but it happens if you're so isolated. And so let's imagine if you had just a buddy, you could just tap their shoulder and say, hey, would you put a comma here? No, I wouldn't. Oh, okay, good. And then you move on. And not having that back and forth can kind of be lonely, creates that self-doubt and isolation. So yeah, it's a big thing with editing. It can definitely be isolating. And like you said, in a company with employees, you could still feel lonely.
Yeah. So where can we follow you or connect with you if we're interested in your services and your products and your upcoming products?
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm so nervous about it because I'm not even close to launching it, but I hope I can launch it this year, honestly. But okay, so my website is Pique Publishing, and it's spelled Pique, which means like pique your interest. And so everything is on my website. You can find the podcast on there. The podcast is on several different platforms, and you can find that. All of my, I guess, core capabilities and differentiators, I hope, are outlined well enough on the website. But I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm on all the main platforms. Okay. So just look for either Pique Publishing or my name, and you'll find me somewhere.
Okay. All righty. Well, thank you for coming on and sharing your expertise, your background, and your advice for aspiring writers and people in the business space, right? Just understanding how to navigate different business models. And so we look forward to hearing from you. We look forward to the affirmation cards and all the other new products. And I look forward to us staying connected and just hearing more about what's going on in your world. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Sonia. This was great.
Thank you. And thank you all for listening. We'll be back again next week with another dynamic guest. Take care.
The Business First podcast is hosted and produced by Sonia Aline. Executive producer Ken Johnson. Find the Business First podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Odyssey, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, TuneIn, or wherever you get your podcast. On social media on IG at business_first_podcast. Follow the Mean Old Line Media Podcast Network on IG at Mean Old Line Media. Get the Mean Old Line Media app in the App Store or Google Play. The Business First podcast is a Mean Old Line Media production.